We learned a long time ago that if culture is important to us, and if specific aspects of culture are important to us, then we need to measure them. We need to have an objective sense for how well we're doing so that we can double down on those things that are successful and course correct on those areas where we're not doing nearly so well as we would like. I actually have a weekly meeting. Tuesday mornings at 9 a.m., Cindy and I sit down and we go through TINYpulse. We go through all of the comments. We look at the upcoming questions. Our employees know that we're looking at their feedback. They know simply by dint of routine. They also know because when we have our community meetings and when we have our managers meetings, we talk about what we've seen in TINYpulse. We talk about trends or themes. We talk about what we're doing with suggestions and how we're acting on them, and how we're improving decision-making, improving culture. We also talk about the feedback in TINYpulse as part of our weekly leadership team meeting. And the fact that our employees know that we're doing that is important. The fact that we're doing it is important. And the fact that when we act on their feedback, we make that known, gives people confidence that the things that we say about culture are more than just things that we say, that they create concrete action, concrete benefit. There were things that we had been doing prior to use of TINYpulse that we thought were to safeguard the mental health of employees, to insulate them from news that could be stressful, from concerns that may or may not come to fruition. So there were conversations that we would have behind closed doors. There were times that we were having conversations behind closed doors and we weren't necessarily talking about information that was super secret that we didn't want other people to know. It was just a conversation behind a closed door. And one of the things that we learned very quickly, first in that community meeting and then through TINYpulse, was that that created anxiety and paranoia. And that people would much rather know everything that's going on, even those things that might give them a sense for risk, that might tell them, all right, if this goes wrong, this could turn out badly for some portion of the people here or for all of us. They would rather know than not know. So we immediately became much more transparent. We've experienced lots of additional benefits through TINYpulse. Certainly, we have much higher engagement with TINYpulse today than we did when we first rolled it out a few years ago. It's now very much a part of the culture. It's also a part of the infrastructure. We've integrated TINYpulse, and in particular Cheers for Peers, with a Slack channel called Wheelhouse Wins. And so there's a constant reminder that TINYpulse exists. Our participation in our weekly question, our weekly polls, continues to increase, even when we have open text questions and we ask people for suggestions or open form feedback. I'm surprised and pleased at the level of engagement and level of participation, and hope that trend will continue. The key to keeping participation high with TINYpulse is acting on the feedback and then making clear that you're acting on the feedback. That so clearly conveys to employees that they have influence and power and that they can inform and change the culture and change decision-making. And because culture is so central to who and what we are, culture really is the core of our strategy. The ability to contribute to our culture, to influence the culture, to change it and evolve it over time, in part through TINYpulse, is something that people really appreciate. I would recommend using TINYpulse to anyone who cares about culture, anyone who cares about their employees, anyone who wants clear, transparent, authentic, and honest feedback and wants to be able to act on that and improve their company. We focus a lot on diversity and inclusion. And TINYpulse was a platform where, particularly in the early stages, people were able to express their passions and their desire and their worry about diversity and inclusion. They were able to say, I'm concerned about this particular community, or I may be a member of this community and it seems like we have underrepresentation, or I'm worried that we're not doing anything that is deliberate enough to improve representation or to improve how welcome certain people feel in our company. And doing that anonymously through TINYpulse gave us insight into sentiments that we wouldn't have been able to get in any other way.